Welcome to the Informed Pregnancy and Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Elliot Berlin, and you have tuned into the before episode of another before and after birth story. My guest today is an 18-year veteran of the television industry. She spent the first half of her career working on little-known reality shows such as MTV's The Real World, Project Runway, and Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Currently, she's the head of production at Transition Productions, now specializing in live and documentary sports content for NBC, ESPN, and HBO, and where she and her producing team were nominated for a Sports Emmy in 2016. She is a proud native New Yorker, now residing with her husband here in Venice, California, and they're getting ready for a transition of their own in the not-too-distant future. Erica Ciccone Clancy, welcome to the podcast.
Than's for having me, Dr.
Did I say it right?
You did. You did great.
I thought you were kidding when you said that.
Nope, you got it right.
There's so many fascinating things about you. I don't know where to start. Let's just start where you're from originally.
Sure. So I'm originally from New York City, born and raised in Queens.
Yeah.
Only a slightly cooler borough than when you're from.
Staten Island? It's fun to say. It's two words and everything.
I am the middle of three girls from a really middle-class working family from Queens.
How'd you like being the middle child?
I think it explains a lot once you get to know me. I think it explains a lot about my personality and my quirks. And, we were from a really close-knit Italian family, so we're very loud and very passionate, but also very close and very involved in each other's lives.
Like the five of you are very close?
Yeah, everybody, like our entire family.
Or extended too?
Our extended family as well, yeah.
Does anybody else live here?
Nobody else lives here.
Oh.
Yeah, I am the black sheep of my family, I like to say I do the things I say I'm going to do, and one of them was to move here, and 10 years later, here I am.
So 10 years ago, you said, I'm moving to...
Yeah, I always just I loved California. I had traveled out here a lot through work and, really loved being near the ocean and surfing, and just the lifestyle out here had always intrigued me.
What brought you here for the first time?
Work.
In production?
In production, yeah. I was working at MTV.
I've heard of it.
Yep. Right in Times Square.
Boutique outfit.
Yep. 1515 Broadway.
What were you doing there? Is that where you started in production?
That is how I started in production. I was a very young intern there. I started interning there before I graduated college.
Oh, cool.
Kind of just knew what I wanted to do. I went to the University of Stony Brook, which is a state school in New York, and it's kind of far away from the city, but close enough to be able to commute in every day. So I would, a few days a week, jump on the LIR right on my campus and be in the middle of the city, and started my internship there.
Oh, cool. And you grew from there.
I did.
So they sent you to California for the first time?
Yeah, many times, and just really became engulfed in the lifestyle out here. Along
the way, where did you meet your husband?
So my husband and I, in production as well, so he's from Connecticut, but we met here in LA. I actually hired him on a television show, and always felt like he was a lot younger than me, even though he was only 2 years younger than me. At the time, it was, I just hired him as a PA, which is just an assistant around the set, helping with certain things, and I think I was probably attracted to him right away. I'd never seen his type of style. Like, even though he was a Connecticut boy, he had this really cool, like, surfer skater style with the Vans and the high socks, and it kind of definitely piqued my interest. But we were friends for many, many years, and every time I came to LA, I would hire him because of his talents.
He was living here and
he was already
working
living here. Yeah, exactly. So when I came out for work, I would hire him, and we developed this really, really great relationship, friendship, and eventually kind of organically turned into something more. So
is he Italian?
He is Italian and Irish, hence the Clancy.
Oh,
yeah.
I see. So half and half.
Yeah. I mean, growing up in New York on the East Coast was such a huge part of my personality still. Like, even though I've lived here for a decade, I tend to still identify very closely with my New York roots, which I think is something that you and I had
we bonded over
right away.
Well, you came in with the accent. I was like, it's like a taste of home.
Yeah, I call it my bi-coastal identity crisis. You know, people are like, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm from New York, but I live here in Venice." I think it'll always be a part of my personality and what I tend to always identify with, which keeps you really grounded.
You can't take the New Yorker out of a New
You
Yorker.
cannot. You
It's
cannot.
like when we moved to Georgia, my wife and I are both from Staten Island.
Yep.
When we moved to Georgia, we kind of started to lose our accent. I didn't even realize it. It just kind of melts away a little bit. And then when we came here, people kept saying, "Where are you from?" I'm like, "Oh, you can't tell?" And I realized it's gone. Yours is still pretty strong.
Mine is still pretty prevalent. And then once I get on the phone with my family,
forget about it.
It gets pretty deep. Yeah, it gets pretty deep. Yeah. So growing up was really cool. Like my mom growing up was a dancer. My grandmother was also a dancer. She was actually a Rockette
Oh, wow.
at Radio City Music Hall, which was a really amazing part of my lineage that I always kind of reach back to.
That's pretty fascinating. So would you go watch their shows?
No, I mean, she had passed away when I was pretty young. So no, but that was just always a part of like the stories my mom would tell about her, which was cool. And so, of course, my mom had us all in dance lessons. We were super young. And that sort of parlayed me into starting gymnastics, which is definitely something I also identify with, being a competitive gymnast basically my entire life up until, I went to college.
Specific elements of gymnastics?
I mean, all-around gymnast. I, trained 5 days a week. My family, it was a big commitment for them to kind of hustle home from work and get me fed into the gym. And I really feel like being a competitive gymnast my whole young life definitely molded me into the person I am today.
Are you competitive by nature?
I think so, yes. I think so. I think it's more, for me, it's more about the perfectionism of being a competitive gymnast. It was, my work ethic, my drive. I think that I find that piece of me almost every single day. So for me, being a competitive gymnast, learning body awareness and body confidence at a really young age definitely has molded me as an adult.
I was at a group of CEOs, and one of the things they were saying when they look for new hires is they always love to get athletes because their work ethic is so strong. Like, to be able to succeed in athleticism, you really have to apply yourself and push yourself.
Exactly.
And if you can translate that into work, it makes you really successful. When did you move here?
I've been here almost a decade. So, 9 years ago, it was a sort of natural progression. I love New York City. I lived on the Upper West Side with my sister for many, many years, and that was a really fast-paced, cool way to be, working hard, partying hard, and just really living. And anytime I go back to New York, I joke, like, don't let me be here for too long, because I'll go and sort of get back on the subway and go to Central Park and go up to my old neighborhood and eat the pizza and just feel like very much back in the mix. So no matter how long I live in LA or travel, anytime I go back to the city, it's like nothing ever changed. So I'll always have that, but the West Coast life has definitely agreed with me in many, many ways that I don't think that, I could ever see myself being back in the city.
How long were you guys like already in a relationship when you moved here?
No. I think it was definitely something that, prompted the move in a small way. Just, having seen how, somebody else from the East Coast would, come out here and work in production and kind of follow their dream of doing something cool in a different place. But I was sort of already on that track, and I think, being with my husband, Dave, was something that moved it along slightly. But I was definitely very much doing my own thing. I moved into this amazing, studio kind of little apartment in Venice Beach, right on the Speedway over there, and right by Muscle Beach, and lived there for 5 years on my own. Actually, we've been together. We just got married last year. We've been together over about 9 years now, but we didn't live together for very long. I think that was just something that I stayed really firm in, and I think it's kind of helped us stay really strong in our relationship. We didn't kind of jump into things too quickly. So
a 9-year jump?
A 9-year jump. I mean, it took us 9 years to get married.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We just had our wedding anniversary, so it's special for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so did you, even though it took 9 years to jump into marriage, did you
Yep.
think about having kids right after, or?
Yeah, we always knew we wanted a family and got married and kind of enjoyed married life for a few months. Didn't really put too much pressure on, let's start a family right away. But after a few months, we're like, okay, let's start trying. And I'm 38, so it could have really went either way for me. One of my sisters got pregnant really quickly and easily, and the other sister didn't. So she had IVF with her 2 kids. And, my mom had 3 kids, but also miscarried with twins. So, it kind of was a crapshoot. So my husband and I were like, let's just try, famous fucking last words. Let's just start trying. And, we were in a committed relationship, and I was never, and this might be too much information, but I was never on birth control. I know it's kind of a hot topic, but I don't want to say never, but I was on birth control for a very short amount of time. I knew my body so well that...
Over your whole life, you mean?
Yeah, maybe it was a few months, maybe even a year, but I knew right away when I was taking it that it didn't agree with me.
Mm-hmm.
The hormones, the mood swings, it didn't work for me.
Okay.
And so we kind of explored other ways of birth control. So I would track my ovulation to not get pregnant. And it worked for that many years. And then all of a sudden you're wanting to get pregnant, so you flip it. You're not having sex on a certain week or so every month. And then you're like, okay, let's flip it and have sex. And literally on the first try, we got pregnant.
It was because you're a perfectionist.
Maybe.
Well, also, you were charting so carefully.
Right. And that's very humbling. And I didn't even really want to share that. I kind of was like, maybe that's not something I want to put out there, but we're very grateful that it happened that way. And it was very humbling because we know a lot of people that have had difficulties getting pregnant. So to say we got it done on the first shot, yeah, I think just things were aligned correctly for it all to happen. And we were shocked, we definitely were not expecting that. We didn't know if we were just kind of settling in for the long haul or not. And when it happened so suddenly, we kind of stayed quiet for a while, which is hard to do when you're so close with your family on both sides.
Oh, you didn't even tell your family?
No, we waited probably 4 or 5 weeks.
Okay.
And I guess the point of that for us was kind of buying some time to create our own opinions and form our own philosophies without those outside opinions.
Pregnancy?
About pregnancy, about our birth intentions, about how we wanted it all to go down.
So you haven't really done research before that?
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's going to take a few months anyway.
Yeah, I got some time,
Typically it does. It's normal for it to take several months.
Right.
So, first shot. Did you know you were pregnant before you tested? Did you feel it?
Yeah, for sure.
What did you feel?
I was on a work trip and, obviously missed my period. And it was 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, 5 days. And again, I don't want to sound overly confident about how in tune I am with my body, but I didn't even need to take a test to know I was pregnant. But I waited 7 days. I got back from my work trip. And we were having a really mundane Sunday. And my husband's like, so bored, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, well, how about I completely fuck up your day? Either the best way. Yeah, it was just
so you didn't tell him that you were late?
I did not, no. Not till I got home from my work trip was I knew. In my body, I knew. But, yeah, I just was like, okay. And I was contemplating it all day, maybe we should go take a bike ride. Maybe we should have a beer, I knew that the minute we took the test, it was going to change everything in a matter of minutes. So, we took the test and I put it down on the counter and I was like, I can't even look. You look. And he said something I was like, what does it say? He said, well, it says 2 words. Or no, it says a word or something, And I was like, it took me a minute to register. Is it? Anyway. Yeah, and then it's so intense how everything changes in a moment. And no, I hadn't planned anything. I pulled from some birth stories from my family, specifically my sister and my sister-in-law. And this is a funny story I tell. is that, two people I really respect in my life, my sister and my sister-in-law. One of them had her first child a few years ago, and I said, Courtney, how was it? There was this one particular line that she had used that stuck in my head. She said, Erica, when I got rolled out of that hospital room, like from the birthing room into like the recovery room, she said, I looked back and I said, a fucking massacre occurred in that room. And so like just the thought of like birth and a massacre, and she was kidding, she was joking, but she literally, that was her thought in her head. And I was like, that must have just stuck in my brain for a long time. And then my sister-in-law, who, when I had asked her about her birth story a while ago, she was like, well, my first child, who's 14 now, I had on a farm. And I knew nothing about Ina May and the farm. When she had told me the story, I was like, oh, maybe she was like milking a cow and went into labor.
She had the baby at the farm?
She did, but at the time she just described it like, oh, I just had a baby on a farm.
Like a farm.
Yeah, on a farm. I was like, cool, you were at a farm and you went into labor and you had to have the baby on the farm. I don't know.
Just next to a cow having a baby over there.
I was like, and then a couple years later, I was like, Irene, you did not tell me it was the farm, and she had described her birth story as magical. Ooh. And I'd never heard somebody say my birth was magical. So here I am like, okay, I have a massacre on one side of me and magical on the other side of me. And I think that may have kind of spawned the idea of home birth. And even a week before I found out I was pregnant, I would have never in a million years thought that I would ever consider a home birth. Yeah, which I'm probably jumping ahead, but yeah.
Well, yeah. So that's what you picked.
It is what I picked. It is. That's what we're intending on doing.
Well, that's your plan A.
That is my plan A. That's what you're hoping
for.
Yes.
Before we get to that, just about the pregnancy.
Yeah.
How many weeks are you now?
I'm going on 36 weeks now.
Okay, so we're getting close. Mm-hmm. How has pregnancy been for you?
Pregnancy has been such a trip. It's been really fun and empowering, and empowering is a word that's used so frequently nowadays, but it really is empowering. It's really amazing to see that even though your body changes so much, but I still feel this strong sense of my muscles and my core and my heart, and just everything has just been very heightened, but in a really beautiful way. Like, I've had a really great pregnancy. I've had 0 morning sickness. My husband cooks really amazing food and makes sure that we're well nourished, which I think was a big deal in terms of how I felt spiritually, emotionally, physically. And in a way, it's kind of given me a new platform to explore wellness and mindfulness. So it's been a trip. It's been really fun. I'm actually a little sad that I'm not going to be pregnant in a few weeks. It's going to be hard. I'm sure at that point, you have a whole new set of things, but it's been a really beautiful process for me.
There's a lot of ways that you're not typical, but that's also, I think, not the typical thing that you hear when you ask someone who's 36 weeks pregnant. How are you enjoying pregnancy? It's usually the first few things are like what aches and pains and not comfortable moving is difficult.
Right,
just getting used to a larger body. So it's pretty neat that you're enjoying it. Do you think that some of it's because of your athletic background? Like, because this is it is a lot of work constantly just be building baby and carrying baby wherever you go.
Yeah, I've definitely rolled out the red carpet for myself in terms of this pregnancy. I am very active with yoga. I feel like yoga and meditation really has been the backbone of this entire process for me. Yeah, I mean,
it's my terminology.
It is. Yeah, I mean that's probably number 3. So yoga, meditation, body work. Mm-hmm. Obviously my appointments with you have been a game changer because your body changes so much, and you need somebody really getting in those nooks and crannies to make sure that you're staying strong but staying limber and loose, which is stuff that we've talked about in our appointments. Like, you can't make somebody strong at that point in their pregnancy, but if they're already strong, we can do all these things to kind of help
we can get rid of the tight.
Yeah, manipulate the body. And acupuncture and massage and nutrition. I mean, I've really gone the full gamut of like things And, I feel really grateful to have the resources we do, in Los Angeles where we live, and to have the financial means to really see specialists and have the opportunity to work with amazing doulas and midwives and people like yourself. So
thanks.
I feel really lucky.
It's mutual.
Thank you.
You, spoiler alert, you talked about the fact that you're planning on a home birth, and I want to learn a lot more about that. But we're going to take a very quick break, and then we'll come back and talk about what you're planning. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a minute with Erica Ciccone Clancy.
Hi, I'm Kate.
And I'm Liz.
And we host the Mom Deconstructed podcast. We interview moms to find out the real story of their mothering journey. Motherhood is the most difficult job there is, but unless we allow ourselves to create community and accept the help of others, it can be a very lonely endeavor.
Let's get beyond the superficial, delve into the dreams that inspire us, the struggles that test us, and the conversations that connect us. You can listen to Mom Deconstructed anywhere you get your podcasts, from the Parents on Demand Network and at momdeconstructed.com.
Welcome back to the Informed Pregnancy and Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Elliot Berlin, and we're continuing our fascinating journey with Erica Ciccone Clancy. So you're having a home birth. You had on one shoulder, you had massacre. On the other shoulder, you had magic. And it sounds like you wanted to gravitate towards magic.
I did.
But surely you did some research. So what kind of resources did you look into in order to make your decisions?
First, can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that, I've learned to, through this process, to respect every woman's decision, what
Sure.
they feel comfortable doing. So it's sort of like what's best for everybody. What's best for one is not best for the other. I have a good girlfriend of mine who we're about a week apart, and she is all bring on the science. She got pregnant via IVF. Her husband had an autoimmune disorder that it got touch and go for a while, and science brought him back to life. Mm-hmm. So like we talk, and I'm on this one side of the spectrum and she's on the other. So I just want to make sure that even though this is the decision I've chosen, I definitely respect every woman who chooses the hospital birth, because that's what makes her comfortable and happy, and that's what empowers her. So
first of all, in Los Angeles, there's a gazillion options. You can have home birth with an obstetrician, home birth with a midwife, birthing center birth. You can have hospital birth with midwives, and hospital birth with obstetricians. You can have medicated, unmedicated vaginal cesarean. There's a gazillion choices.
Say that 20 times.
On how to have a kid today, and there's no right or wrong way. There's, that's the whole concept of informed pregnancies. We provide you with lots of information and choices and perspective, and then you just pick, what makes the most sense to you, surround yourself with good providers and go. So I'm totally on the same page with that. But in your case, you chose home birth. I think anybody should give birth where they feel comfortable, and supported.
I mean, for me, of course, you start out with the what do you read, what do you watch, what do you listen to shape your birth intentions. And obviously we did all that research, all the books, For me, Ina May was a big push. I read her guide to childbirth. Like even now today, every night I read Spiritual Midwifery, all those beautiful birth stories. Kind of helps me fall asleep with a clear and happy thoughts in my brain in terms of birthing. I started meditating a few years ago with this amazing app called Headspace.
Oh, yeah.
That helped me through like the year I was married. It kept me very much in the present, very in the moment. I have this very vivid memory of chaos the morning of my wedding, and just closing my eyes and remembering all the techniques I've learned through Headspace, and really being present and changing everything, changed the entire day for me. It really reminded me to be in the moment. So, reading, the meditation. Obviously, I got very into your podcast. I think, you've had all the superstars, all the birth workers, on your podcast, which flatters me to be here as well. But, having somebody that you kind of know personally, like yourself, interview and conversate with some really amazing birth workers has been eye-opening. And of course, Business of Being Born, everybody talks about, everybody watches. There was another amazing documentary I watched called, my husband and I watched, called Why Not Home?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that one doesn't get as much press as Business of Being Born does, but it's essentially about OBs and labor and delivery nurses that decide to have their babies at home and why. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of more informative. It was a little more up to date, I think, than Ricky Lake's documentary, although that's that's what everybody watches.
The iconic
it is.
Open your mind to other alternative forms of birth.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting because when I first came to California, I didn't really know anybody who had home birth ever. And this is probably about 15 years ago. And the first time I heard about it, I thought, oh, that's a very specific type of person. And
Sure.
I pictured like tree-hugging, Prius-driving, vegan hippie, and then slowly but surely, I started to meet other people, also an obstetrician who had her babies at home and other professionals who had their babies at home, just very, very diverse different types of cultures and backgrounds and ethnicities. And they couldn't be more similar in other ways, and they were all choosing to have home birth. And
Right.
you started to realize it's deeper than that. And so also,
Right.
like originally, if I had a picture, that home birth image that I originally had in my mind, you would not have fit into it.
Yeah, I don't think I would at all. I don't.
So-
I have no idea how I became a part of the 2%. I have no idea. But
It's a growing 2%.
it is, and more so about the reading and the watching, and you kind of just need to get off the internet and off your television and start doing shit and collecting your own information. Like I said before, using meditation and yoga as a basis for everything. The yoga led me to my amazing doula, Patty Quintero, with
whom we have an episode.
Yes, and she was a game changer as well, in terms of her spirituality and the way her company Uma Mother is looking at this process. She led me to you. To Dr. Berlin. And then so you led me almost to, this amazing food delivery service that's just starting up right now called 25/8 with this wonderful woman named Erica Ciccone. And
We'll have her someday.
you should. She's very passionate about what
So
she's doing.
passionate.
My midwives at LA Midwife Collective, Monica Wood and Jennifer Brandon Vreese, they led me to Britta Bushnell. And Dave and I took this amazing 2-day intensive Britta class over Labor Day weekend that was so informative. And the way in which Britta teaches through mythology and through storytelling, you could read so many books, but when you finally get into the thick of it, I'm thinking when I get into the thick of it in labor, I'm not going to be pulling all that information from those books that I read. I'm going to be reaching for the stories that Britta told about Apollo and Artemis and these mythical creatures and what they embody to help me through birth. Another amazing person that I met through Britta's classes, who was sort of her second during these birthing classes, was Lori Bregman, another amazing doula that you've had on the show.
Yes.
And connecting with Lori kind of brought me to my postpartum doula. So there's this amazing chain of people that you meet. And if you just kind of go down that tunnel of the internet and books, you kind of miss out on real life collecting information, meeting people, getting references through your life experiences and not so much just on Dr. Google. So that would be something I took away from this that was special.
We have, just because you brought them up, we have an episode with Britta called Mythologies, Metaphors, and Childbirth.
Yes.
And she goes into really a lot of detail about why the neocortex, where you store all those facts and figures and data and PowerPoint kind of information, it's good to know, but we hope that part of the brain shuts
Goes
off
away.
during labor.
Yeah.
But these stories and metaphors live a little deeper, more towards the limbic system, the part of the brain where that hard wiring is that every female on the planet has, human or otherwise, right, is born with, and
That wild side.
Well, it's the wild type, but it's the pre-programmed hardwiring that takes the sperm and the egg and grows a human being out of it with no help from the outside, really. We watch and observe and test and measure, but we don't really do anything to make that baby grow. And labor and delivery is sort of the same thing. That hardwiring is there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other animals don't read a book, don't listen to a podcast, don't take a class, watch a movie. They don't have a doula. They don't have a midwife. They just give birth.
Right.
And they go around and start taking care of the newborn. They didn't go to medical school, but they somehow do all the neonatal care,
Right.
And so where that hardwiring is kind of, it's the border between there and the neocortex where stories and metaphors live. So when your front brain kind of flickers out a little bit, you can still reach in for those stories and they can guide you through.
Exactly.
And of course, Lori Bregman, who's a bundle of energy, a wealth of knowledge, and has such a diverse background that makes her who she is, and also authored the book, The Mindful Mom to Be. So you're surrounded by
I am.
really great energy.
Yeah, it was basically just getting out there and getting engulfed in this pregnancy world of people and just gravitating and getting references. Like I said, just getting out off the internet and into the real world and just really meeting people that you connect with and who say and do things that resonate with you and have them refer you to the next person.
Was your husband always on board with the home birth as well?
He was. I mean, amazingly, I think he allowed me to form the decision. He kind of let me have a little more say in it. I mean, I was always like, babe, like this is your child too. This is your birth too. This is your birth experience as well. He kind of like let me lead, but he was on board right from the beginning.
That's pretty cool.
I think, both of us have never really felt connected to hospital births. We'd visit friends in the hospital right after giving birth. I watched my sister birth her second baby in the hospital in Long Island.
No massacre.
And no massacre. The second baby came really, really quick.
That's
and then she said, don't you dare think this is how it's going to happen. She almost had the baby in the car. It's this intense story where like her husband and I were in the car and I was driving. He told me to pull over on the LIE and we switched spots and he drove and the doula was like, are you here yet? And we're like nowhere near the hospital. And it was, there was snow and he's on an embankment and it was just like, literally, she got into the delivery room. They stripped her clothes off because she was in hats and scarves. It was the winter. And she jumped on the bed and
poof.
Literally, little Luca was just there. And
that's incredible.
So it was amazing to watch. But, definitely, I know it doesn't happen like that all the time. And
certainly not with the first one. Yeah.
Definitely not. So, and for me, I think I was always searching for alternative ways to do things. I've never been a rule follower. I like to be informed. I like to make my own choices. I like to go against the grind. I actually also really love my home. I think that's a big part of it, like being comfortable in your body, being in tune with the way it works, and really loving your home. Like I have this secret passion for interior design, and I have definitely spent a lot of time making our home ready for this particular stage in our life. So, we toured the birthing centers and the hospitals, and they were all lovely. But, not to sound so cliche, but we just kept coming back home. And it just felt like we could do this. I'm confident. And I know birth is unpredictable, but it would be nice to at least control some things like your environment and your choices and your sheet count.
You always bring sheets with you.
I know. I just, even though I know you have to get the, we're doing our birth kit right now, like our shopping list of things. And, you have to get the shitty sheets because they're just going to get destroyed. But I could still be on my Casper mattress, but with, 4 layers of
crummy sheet
protection.
That you don't mind throwing away.
Exactly.
So far you mentioned your husband is coming. You have a midwife. You have 2 midwives.
Yes, I have a team of
doula.
midwives. And my doula, correct, Patty Quintero. I think that the food and the nutrition is a really big part of my birth day. I want to make sure, like, we even entertained the idea of having a chef come and doing a craft service spread and having this beautiful food and keeping everybody really nourished. I think that
that's the producer,
and that might lure you there. You know what I'm saying? Like
What's
you could
that?
be.
I might be there.
Yeah, I mean,
well, now
joke
that you
about
mentioned
it,
craft services, I'm in.
You know, the teas and the cold brew and the kitchery and all the wonderful food. I think that when you hear stories of people who attempt to do the home birth and it doesn't happen, a lot of times it's not for an emergency. It's because of exhaustion. And I know that's a very real possibility, but I also feel like keeping everybody fed, and this is from production. This is such like a television production thing. Like
this is producer turned reproducer.
It is like keep the crafty going. Like do not skimp on that craft service because
it keeps everyone
those
strong.
Brownie bites are good. Those gluten-free brownie bites are what's going to keep people going into that 12th, 13th, 14th hour. And so I'm kind of like taking that bit of my everyday life and you know, using that in my birth
That's kind
plan.
of how my role at birth actually turns in anyway. Because in production, when I first came here, we had this company, Production Caressage. And that's what directors would say is like, if you come do chair massage, then you can take somebody who's fatigued and running out of steam and just give them another 2 or 3 hours, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. And Dave and I definitely...
Are you filming it?
We're not filming it. My husband's a amazing, creative still photographer.
Okay.
So we are a still photography family as opposed to video.
Oh.
So
well, it's fine. Nobody really ever watches video.
I produce television, so I hope
I'm not
people
saying
do.
that home video.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
just saying we have hours and hours and gigabytes and gigabytes.
Sure.
It's not really easy to go back to it. But if you have an album, you know, you have pictures, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, I think it's important for him to utilize his passion within the birthing process and take some really beautiful still photos. He's very into recently, he has like a 1930s 4x5 camera that we used at our wedding, and he hikes it up mountains in Hawaii and takes these amazing 4x5
so cool.
photos up there. So I think he'll bust out some of that in terms of still photography, but I don't have much desire to video it.
I have a question. Has your family been on board? I know at first you didn't even tell me you were pregnant because you wanted to think about your
It's
options.
hard, yeah. You talk to them every day, and I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm
good.
But it was important.
Blah.
It was important.
You didn't get any morning sickness, so
I
you
didn't.
could hide it better.
Yeah. Because the advice is going to come. We just delayed it for a few weeks.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
How do they feel about your home birth plan?
You know, I think they are very much on board. They're super supportive. I mean, our family's always been very open-minded. I think I had to explain to them my reasoning. And maybe if they're not 100% comfortable with it, I think they want to make sure that I feel completely supported. So they're on board, you know, and my husband's side of the family, because we did have, you know, one person, my sister-in-law, that did have a farm birth. And with her second child, she attempted a home birth. And when she went into labor, she had meconium in her water. So she had to transfer to a wonderful hospital in Brooklyn and still had an amazing second birth. But I think she kind of broke in the family for that.
Somebody's already walked through the cornfield.
Sort of, yeah. But
and by the way, that's what makes home birth safe is that midwives are pretty skilled at seeing, you know, who's a good candidate for staying at home and who isn't. And they only take, you know, clients who make a good midwife will only take good clients who make sense for home birth. As soon as there's a pink flag, then we transfer care naturally to a hospital setting. So. Right.
And we did do the doctor thing for the first couple weeks. I just felt like, and this might sound ridiculous, but if you're low risk and you're healthy, and I feel like even at 38, I'm probably healthier than half the 20-year-olds I know. I don't know many 20-year-olds, but if I did, I'm sure I am way healthier than them. But I just always found it odd that you would see an OBGYN who essentially, in my eyes, is a surgeon for your prenatal care. And maybe that's really naive to say, but
I think in some other countries you typically would see a midwife throughout your whole pregnancy, and then the doctor's there in case anything more medical pops up that needs to be addressed by a medical doctor or a surgeon.
Right.
But, I think a lot of people scratch their heads and wonder why, for a typical routine low-risk pregnancy, our system doesn't provide for someone who is not a surgeon, you know, whose tools of the trade are not drugs and surgery, to guide you, manage you, help you, and support you in your pregnancy.
Because essentially it's cheaper. I mean, not for us, because you have to sort of, pay out of pocket. Like the realness of the home birth.
In our system, midwives end up being more expensive. But if that was built into the healthcare system, like it is in other countries, then childbirth should conceivably, no pun intended, cost us less.
Right.
Do you have concerns about the intensity or like very specific comfort measures that you plan to fall back on?
I think that something I've learned through, especially in the Brita classes, is that in labor, pain equals progress, right? So I'm kind of in a weirdly masochistic way welcoming the pain. And I think to kind of draw back on my life, my young life as an athlete, especially as a gymnast, you learn to push through a lot of pain, a lot of injuries. So I'm hoping I can kind of channel that. But in a way, I think I've learned to take the word pain or intensity and almost welcome it, because that means things are moving along, right? I think I have a pretty high threshold for pain. I think just, again, from being a gymnast, you just learn to push through a lot of pain and intensity for the ultimate goal. And I'm setting myself up, hopefully, with a lot of great comfort measures, with my doula and the freedom of movement and my yoga ball and the rebozo and all those really cool like pain coping techniques that we've kind of learned, my husband and I, to deal with that. But I think there's still like that unknown. I feel like I want to make sure I'm doing everything I can to prepare. Like in gymnastics, it's you're training so long and hard, all these hours for this, these 4 events. And you could just have a bad day. And that doesn't mean you didn't train really, really hard. That just means you had a bad day and you fell off beam, or you stumbled out of bounds on floor exercise. But I think all the work is in the preparation, and then you kind of have to just let it go and see what happens. And I know it's not going to be easy. It's not called labor for nothing.
Yeah.
But
it's so inspiring just to even hear you talk about that background in gymnastics and how perfectionist like you have to be, and you push through and you train and it's something that is, I didn't necessarily have that growing up. Like like you talk about stumbling out of bounds on the mat, and I sometimes fall out of bed watching Netflix. It's not exactly the same, but I'm just saying the next day you get up and you try again. You watch more Netflix. And
right, you probably train really hard to stay in bed watching Netflix,
but
every now and then you fall out.
You learn. You learn. Don't be hanging off the edge if you're holding onto the remote and falling asleep.
Yeah.
I'm very inspired by you, and I do
Thank
think I do think that it's that mindset of being able to sort of mind over body, right? Is what you had to do, and then Headspace helps you with that even more. Your meditations and your yoga really.
I'm trying to score you some sponsors here.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Headspace, I know
Take
them.
the kickback.
Yeah. So. I don't know. I'm excited. I even during the pregnancy, I look forward to our visits together. You inspire me in a lot of different ways. As you kind of mentioned earlier, everybody has their own birth intentions and their own birth plans. It sounds like you've put a lot of thought into it and a lot of work into it, and we're getting pretty close.
We are.
It's
I'm
pretty
about
exciting.
to start my two times a week with you, and hopefully get that body limber and ready to go.
Did the midwives already do the home check, or is that coming
That's
up
actually
soon?
coming up,
Next
next week.
week?
Yep. So
that's the real deal. Then you're in the zone.
We're in the
37
zone.
weeks,
Yeah, we're in the red zone for sure. And, I think that there's a lot of information out there. It's so overwhelming. But I think I will have success no matter how this turns out by staying really true to our feelings and staying true to our vision. Not doing something because it's trendy, not doing something because it's what this famous person did. I think you have to really stay true to your vision, and you won't be disappointed. And be flexible, like that's a really terrible gymnastics pun, but to stay flexible,
That's true.
and we definitely are not engaging too hard in the what happens if we transfer, what happens if we find out that transferring is the next best thing. Mm-hmm. We will prepare for it, but I think to stay in a certain mindset is what we're going for.
I love it.
Yeah, and connecting with your husband throughout this whole process has been probably the number one technique I've learned, is like, you're not in this alone. I have a great partner, and, all the doulas and all the, home chefs and midwives in the world really aren't going to compare to me pulling from the strong relationship I have with my husband and having this journey with him. And when shit hits the fan, him being okay if I tell him to go fuck himself, because I probably will. And he laughs when we say that, but he knows that's just all out of love, and he's got a pretty thick skin, and he knows we're in this together. So
It's amazing that you feel strong enough and safe enough in your relationship to be able to just express whatever you're feeling, including that. I look forward to seeing you again, or listening to you again, after your baby is here.
Awesome.
And finding out how your journey went.
And I'll see you in the morning. We have an 8:15.
And I'll see you tomorrow morning at 8:15.
Yeah,
We might as well just hang out all night. Because I guess at home you don't realize it's pretty late now. Okay. Thanks so much for being here, Erica.
Thank you for having me.
At home, thanks for listening to the Informed Pregnancy Podcast. If you like our show, go ahead and share us with your friends and take a moment to give us some feedback, either in your podcast app or by writing to info@informedpregnancy.com.
Doctor, give me the news. I got a whole lot of questions for you. This kid's gonna test my will. I got a lot to learn, and my baby's due.
This podcast is a proud member of Parents on Demand, a network of high-quality shows for families just like yours. Download our free network app on Apple and Android and listen to your favorite episodes on the go.